Dr. Catherine Riley. Kate, to her colleagues and friends, in the bustling Boston biotech sphere where she now thrived, adjusted the focus on her microscope, the intricate dance of cellular structures sharp and clear beneath the lens. Here, in the sterile quiet of the lab, surrounded by the hum of advanced equipment and the focused energy of fellow researchers, she felt competent, respected, in control. It was a world meticulously built, brick by hard-won brick, and deliberately distanced from the messy, emotionally fraught landscape of her upbringing back in the working-class suburbs near Buffalo, New York. A past defined by a single, unwavering dynamic. Her younger brother Sean was the sun, and Kate was the dutiful planet expected to orbit him silently, providing light and warmth without expecting any in return. Looking back, the pattern was evident even in early childhood. Sean, blessed with their mother, Moira's easy charm, and their father, Patrick's laid-back indifference to rules, was the golden child. His minor achievements, a passable grade, a goal scored in Pee Wee soccer, a crudely drawn picture, were met with effusive praise and rewards. His transgressions, skipped homework, minor mischief, a perpetually messy room, were excused with sighs and indulgent smiles. "He's just spirited," Moira would say, ruffling his hair. "He has a sensitive soul." Kate, quieter, more serious, academically gifted, was simply reliable. Her straight A's were expected, acknowledged with a brief nod before conversation shifted back to Sean's latest exploit. When she won the county spelling bee in 7th grade, her parents attended the ceremony but spent most of the time whispering about whether Sean needed new sneakers for his upcoming band practice. Sean, who had quit band 2 weeks later. When Kate meticulously saved her babysitting money for months to buy a used telescope she yearned for, Moira gently suggested she should perhaps lend that money to Sean instead, who desperately needed the newest video game console all his friends had. Kate learned early to dim her own light, to manage expectations downward, to find satisfaction in quiet competence, rather than seeking external validation that rarely came. Her escape route, she had decided early on, would be education. She poured herself into her studies, particularly math and science, driven by a fierce desire to build a life based on merit, far from the arbitrary emotional economy of the Riley household. Her dream crystallized around biomedical engineering, a field that fascinated her, promising intellectual challenge and, crucially, financial independence. She worked tirelessly through high school, juggling advanced placement classes with a part-time job at a local pharmacy, meticulously saving every dollar, secretly researching universities known for top engineering programs, Cornell, RIDT, even dreaming of places further afield. The acceptance letter arrived on a gray March afternoon during her senior year. Not just an acceptance, but a substantial scholarship offer to Rochester Institute of Technology's prestigious biomedical engineering program, enough combined with federal aid she knew she qualified for, to make attending achievable without burdening her parents. She remembered clutching the letter, reading it over and over in the quiet privacy of her bedroom, tears of pure, unadulterated joy streaming down her face. It felt like a miracle, a golden ticket out, proof that her hard work had mattered, even if her own family rarely acknowledged it. She pictured telling her parents, imagine maybe, just maybe, seeing genuine pride in their eyes this time. That same afternoon the phone rang. It was her mother, her voice tight with panic. Patrick, working his shift at the Niagara steel plant where he'd been a foreman for 25 years, had been involved in a serious accident. A heavy piece of machinery malfunctioned. He'd fallen, suffering multiple fractures, including a shattered hip that would require extensive surgery and months, possibly years, of rehabilitation. His ability to return to the physically demanding work he'd always known was suddenly terrifyingly uncertain. The planned celebration dinner for Kate's R-rate acceptance never happened. The atmosphere in the house shifted overnight from his usual low-level tension to one of palpable fear and financial anxiety. Patrick's recovery was slow, painful, filled with setbacks. The disability payments were a fraction of his former salary. Moira, who hadn't worked outside the home since Sean was born, was overwhelmed trying to manage Patrick's care, the mounting medical bills, and the household on a drastically reduced income. Sean, then a junior in high school, reacted to the stress by becoming moodier, more withdrawn, spending hours locked in his room with his guitar, contributing nothing. The weight inevitably fell on Kate. She was 18, bright, capable, reliable. She was the strong one. The conversation happened late one night in the cramped kitchen, under the harsh fluorescent light, the smell of rubbing alcohol from Patrick's bandages lingering in the air. Moira sat across from Kate, her face pale and drawn, clutching a stack of bills. "Kate, honey," Moira began, her voice trembling slightly. We need to talk about college." Kate's heart sank. "That RIT scholarship, it's wonderful, truly a blessing, but..." Tears welled in Moira's eyes. "Your father, he can't work. We don't know for how long. The medical bills are piling up. His disability barely covers the mortgage payment. And Sean, poor Sean is taking this so hard. He needs stability right now, needs his family around him." She reached across the table, grasping Kate's hand, her touch surprisingly cold. "Maybe just for 1 year, Kate. Could you defer RIT? Stay here, take some classes at Erie Community College, maybe? Get a full-time job? Just until your father's back on his feet properly? We need you here, honey. I can't manage this alone. Sean needs his big sister." Moira's tears flowed freely now, a familiar tool deployed with practiced ease. She didn't mention her getting a job or Sean contributing. The expectation fell squarely solely on Kate. Kate looked at her mother's tear-streaked face, thought of her father lying immobilized in the living room, thought of Sean strumming his guitar in his bedroom oblivious to the crisis. Her dream, the RIT scholarship, her escape route, it felt suddenly selfish, impossibly out of reach, weighed against the immediate, tangible needs of her family. The ingrained sense of duty, the lifetime of conditioning to put their needs first, overwhelmed her own desires. With a heavy heart that felt like a physical stone in her chest, Kate made the sacrifice. She called RED admissions the next day, declined the scholarship, and deferred her dream indefinitely. She enrolled in night classes at ECC and found a full-time job as a pharmacy technician. The irony of working in healthcare while her own father recovered not lost on her. Her modest paycheck immediately became part of the household budget, absorbed by bills, groceries, co-pays for Patrick's physical therapy. And slowly, inevitably, the demands grew. It started small. "Kate, could you possibly lend Sean $50? Moira asked one payday. "He needs new strings for his guitar. Says music is the only thing keeping his spirits up." Kate reluctantly handed over the cash, only to see Sean spend it on concert tickets with his friends a week later. Then it was help with the utility bills. Then contributions towards groceries because Sean was a growing boy. The temporary help became the new normal. Kate was working grueling hours, studying late into the night, her own dreams receding further with each passing month, while Sean's needs continued to take center stage. The pattern set in childhood was now solidified by crisis. Kate provided, Sean received, and their parents facilitated the unequal exchange. The resentment, quiet at first, began its slow, inexorable burn. The years following Kate Riley's non-departure for college blurred into a relentless cycle of work, study, and obligation. She finished her associate's degree at Erie Community College, taking night classes after grueling shifts as a pharmacy tech. Patrick's recovery from his factory injury was slow and incomplete. He eventually returned to light duty but never regained his former earning capacity, settling into a forced early retirement with a reduced pension that barely covered property taxes. Martha continued her part-time retail job at Macy's, her wages a drop in the bucket against their mounting bills. And Sean? Sean, perpetually on the verge of artistic greatness, finished high school with mediocre grades, tried ECC for a single disastrous semester, claiming the professors didn't understand his vision, and then fully committed himself to his music career. This translated into sleeping late, playing guitar loudly in the basement, occasionally performing at sparsely attended open mic nights at dive bars, and requiring a steady stream of cash from his parents, facilitated by Moira, funded largely by Kate, for essentials: vintage guitar pedals, studio recording time at a friend's equally broke home setup, gas money for vague networking trips, and band merchandise for bands that never quite materialized. Kate, meanwhile, transferred her ECC credits to the University at Buffalo, continuing the exhausting juggling act of full-time work and part-time studies, now pursuing her bachelor's in biochemical pharmacology. She moved out of her parents' house into a tiny shared apartment near UB to save commute time, but the financial umbilical cord remained firmly attached. The initial temporary help morphed into to assume monthly contributions. It started with covering the fluctuating utility bills, then adding money for groceries because Sean eats so much, then direct cash infusions when Patrick's medical bills exceeded their insurance coverage. Moira became adept at the guilt-laden phone call, usually timed just after Kate received her paycheck. $100 for Sean's demo recording, Kate. It could be his big break. $200 for Dad's new prescription copay, honey. It's so expensive. $150 for car repairs. The old Buick is acting up again. Kate paid, feeling weary, resentful, but trapped by a sense of duty she couldn't shake. Finally, after years that felt back like decades, Kate graduated from UB. Exhausted but triumphant, degree in hand, she immediately began applying for positions in major biotech hubs, desperate for a real escape. She landed a fantastic offer as a research associate at Biogen Dynamics, a leading pharmaceutical research company in Boston, with a salary that seemed almost unbelievable compared to her Buffalo earnings. This was it. Her second chance at the life she was supposed to have had years ago. Telling her parents was tense. Moira cried predictably. Boston? Oh, Kate, that's so far away. Who will look after us? What about Sean? Patrick grunted his disapproval but seemed resigned. Kate stood firm this time. She had her degree, she had the job offer, she had saved just enough for the move. She packed her few belongings into her beat-up car and drove east, the skyline of Buffalo receding in her rearview mirror like a shed skin. Boston was a revelation, challenging, expensive, but exhilaratingly hers. She thrived at Biogen Dynamics, her sharp mind and relentless work ethic quickly noticed. She loved the complex problem-solving, the cutting-edge research. She found a small but decent apartment in Somerville, navigated the T, and slowly began to build a life separate from the gravitational pull of the Riley family drama. But the distance didn't sever the financial ties completely. The calls from Moira continued, now tinged with comparisons between Buffalo's low cost of living and Boston's notoriously high expenses. Oh, honey, it must be so expensive there. How do you manage? Meanwhile, things are still so tight here. Your father worries constantly. And Sean, bless his heart, he's this close to getting his band signed. He just needs some funding for one professionally music video. And the pressure, combined with Kate's significantly higher Boston salary, led to an insidious escalation. The piecemeal contributions weren't enough anymore. Moira, expertly weaving guilt and obligation, negotiated a new arrangement, a fixed automatic monthly transfer from Kate's account to theirs. They settled, after much haggling and tearful appeals from Moira, on a staggering $3,000 a month. It covers everything, Kate, Moira had assured her brightly. The mortgage, the utilities, food, Dad's prescriptions, and leaves a little buffer so we're not calling you for every little emergency. Plus, she added conspiratorially, a tiny bit to help Sean with his career development fund. Kate, wanting peace, wanting to avoid the constant negotiation and guilt trips, wanting perhaps to believe this large sum would finally grant her some emotional distance, agreed. She set up the automatic transfer, justifying the enormous amount by telling herself she could technically afford it now, even in Boston, if she lived frugally. It was the price, she told herself, of keeping them stable, and more importantly, keeping them relatively quiet so she could focus on her demanding new career. And so began the bizarre dichotomy of her Boston life. Professionally, she ascended. She received promotions at Biogen, became a respected member of her research team, contributed to significant projects. Yet personally, she lived like a perpetually struggling graduate student. Her apartment remained sparsely furnished. She religiously packed her lunch, rarely ate out, drove the same aging car until it finally died, then relied solely on public transport, declined invitations for weekend trips or expensive dinners with colleagues, her social life constrained by the invisible anchor of that $3,000 monthly transfer. Colleagues, noting her talent and position, sometimes made gentle inquiries about her Spartan lifestyle. Kate would offer vague excuses about aggressive saving goals or helping family back home, embarrassed by the truth. It was during a rare work-related social event, a biotech industry mixer at a downtown hotel, that she met Dr. Ben Carter. He was a physician researcher, affiliated with one of the major teaching hospitals, intelligent, witty, with kind eyes and a calm, grounded demeanor that immediately put Kate at ease. They fell into conversation easily, discussing research challenges, hospital bureaucracy, and eventually, life outside the lab. They started dating cautiously. Ben was everything her family was not. Emotionally mature, respectful, genuinely interested in her thoughts and experiences, not just her utility. He was divorced, shared custody of a teenage daughter, and possessed a quiet understanding of life's complexities. He seemed to sense the carefully constructed walls around Kate's personal life but didn't push. As their relationship deepened, however, he began to gently notice the discrepancies. Her obvious intelligence and successful career contrasted sharply with her extreme frugality and reluctance to plan future trips or make large personal purchases. One evening, after Kate had deflected yet another suggestion for a weekend getaway citing budget constraints, Ben asked gently, his tone kind but direct. "Kate," he began, taking her hand across the small table at their favorite neighborhood restaurant. "Forgive me for prying, but you have an excellent position at Biogen. You work incredibly hard, yet you sometimes seem financially strained in a way that doesn't quite add up." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Is everything okay back home? You mentioned helping your family, and it seems like a significant commitment." Kate gave her usual vague explanation. "It's complicated, Ben. They need my help." Ben nodded understandingly. "Of course. Family is important." He squeezed her hand gently. "But you're important too, Kate. You deserve to enjoy the life you're working so hard to build. You're allowed to keep something for yourself." His words, delivered without judgment, resonated deeply. It was the first time someone outside the family vortex had explicitly validated the feeling that had been growing inside her for years. The feeling that the arrangement wasn't just generous, it was fundamentally unfair, unsustainable, and slowly erasing her own life. Ben's quiet observation planted a seed of critical self-reflection, making her question the obligation she had shouldered for so long, just as the unexpected discovery on her mother's iPad weeks later would provide the devastating proof of just how misplaced that obligation truly was. Kate made the obligatory trip back to the Buffalo area for Christmas that year, steeling herself for the usual performance. The family home felt simultaneously familiar and suffocating, the scent of pine needles and her mother's overly sweet potpourri, the constant drone of the television where Patrick held court, the low-level tension simmering beneath the forced holiday cheer. Sean, now 26, was present, full of vague pronouncements about his upcoming EP release, and casually mentioning needing funds for professional mastering. Kate contributed with polite smiles, helped Moira in the kitchen, endured Patrick's pronouncements about the economy, and silently counted the hours until her flight back to Boston, back to her real life with Ben. Late Christmas night, after the relatives had departed and her parents and Sean had gone to bed, Kate found herself unable to sleep, restless in her old childhood bedroom. Her own phone had died earlier after a long video call with Ben, and she needed to check her flight details for the early morning departure. Remembering Moira always left her iPad charging on the kitchen counter downstairs, she slipped quietly out of her room and padded down the dark hallway. The kitchen was dimly lit by the glow of the microwave clock. She found the iPad, its screen dark. She picked it up, unlocked it. Moira still used the same simple passcode, 1234, and opened the browser. As the airline website loaded, a notification banner slid down from the top of the screen, displaying a message preview. ATM Fund Money. Sean. Need money for new amp badly. Can we hit K for extra next month? Kate froze, her blood turning to ice water. A TM fund with a money bag emoji? A group chat involving her parents and Sean? Her heart began to pound, a sick sense of dread mixing with a morbid, undeniable curiosity. Her thumb trembled as she tapped the notification banner, opening the messaging app directly into the group chat history. She started scrolling upwards, back through time, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't just recent messages. It went back months. Years, maybe. A secret, ongoing discussion about her framed entirely around her financial utility. Moira, to Patrick Sean last month. Kate's quarterly bonus should deposit Friday. Sean, maybe a good time next week to mention needing help upgrading your recording software. Sound extra stressed about it. Patrick to Moira 2 months ago. Got off call, W9. Kate. Same old story. Feels guilty, we're struggling, happy to help. Doesn't suspect a thing about the actual mortgage balance. Keep it that way. Sean to parents 3 months ago. LOL just told Kate I needed $200 for gas money to get to a potential gig. Actually buying those limited edition Nikes LMAO TH ATM. Moira to Sean 4 months ago. Don't push Kate too hard about helping with a down payment for your studio apartment. Yet, sweetie. Wait until after her annual performance review at Biogen. Better timing. Let her think the $3,000 she sends is barely keeping us afloat right now. Patrick to Moira Sean 6 months ago. Ran into Kate's old professor from UB today. Mentioned Kate's doing okay in Boston. Important research, but probably doesn't pay all that much. You know how nonprofits are. Kate noted wryly that Biogen was definitely not a nonprofit. Need to keep her expectations of our finances low, so she keeps sending the full amount. Moira to Patrick, same time frame. Good thinking, Pat. If she realized how much that fancy Boston biotech job really pays, she might get ideas above her station, maybe cut back on helping us. Best she thinks we're always just scraping by. Sean to parents 8 months ago. Seriously, how long can we keep this up? When are we going to tell her the mortgage was actually paid off last year? How long can we keep banking that extra $3,000 she sends every month? Kate physically recoiled from the screen, a gasp escaping her lips. Paid off? The mortgage she was sending $3,000 a month to help cover was already paid off. They had been taking her money, thousands upon thousands, under completely false pretenses. Moira to Sean replied to above. Hush, Sean. Not another word. Not until your music career truly takes off and you can support yourself properly. We need that cushion. She'll never know. She's happy thinking she's our savior. It works perfectly. Then Kate saw it. A voice message icon from Sean sent just a few weeks prior, likely after a call where Kate had gently questioned if he was making any progress finding part-time work. Her hands shaking almost uncontrollably, Kate pressed play, holding the iPad speaker close to her ear, terrified yet compelled to hear the final brutal truth. Sean's voice filled the silent kitchen, laced with cynical laughter and perhaps the slur of alcohol. Seriously, guys, it's almost pathetic how easy it is. Just gotta keep playing the sensitive, misunderstood artist card, you know? Lay on the struggle bus vibe. Milk it for all it's worth. He chuckled again. She totally laps it right up. Actually thinks we still give a crap about her as a sister, not just the damn ATM machine. Thinks we still love her or something. It's hilarious. The recording ended, followed immediately in the chat by laughing face emojis typed by both Moira and Patrick. Kate sank onto a cold kitchen chair, the linoleum floor icy against her bare feet. She couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked from the room, replaced by a thick, poisonous fog of betrayal. The messages, the voice note, the casual cruelty, the years of calculated deception, her entire understanding of her family, her sacrifices, the scholarship given up, the frugal life lived, the $3,000 ripped from her own future each month. It wasn't helping family. It was funding their lies, enabling their contempt, fueling their secret mockery of her supposed naivete. She wasn't the dutiful daughter. She was the mark, the fool, the ATM. Silent tears finally began to stream down her face, hot and corrosive, tasting like acid. The depth of their manipulation, stretching back years, was staggering. They hadn't just taken her money. They had actively conspired to keep her ignorant, playing on her guilt, her sense of duty, her desperate, foolish hope for their love and approval. That voice note. Thinks we still love her. Echoed in her skull, shattering the last vestiges of any lingering affection or obligation she felt. She didn't confront them. What was the point? She didn't sleep for the rest of the night, just sat there in the cold, dark kitchen, the iPad screen eventually going dark, staring numbly at the patterns on the floor as years of suppressed hurt and anger churned within her, finally crystallizing into a single cold point of resolve. As the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the kitchen window, Kate moved with a strange, numb efficiency. She quietly retrieved her small overnight bag from the guest room, ensured her wallet and phone, now retrieved and charged using her own portable charger, were secure. She didn't look in on her sleeping parents or brother. She didn't leave a note this time. The group chat was an explanation enough. There was nothing left to say between them. She slipped out the back door as silently as she'd come downstairs hours earlier, got into a rental car parked on the quiet suburban street, and drove away from the Buffalo suburbs without a single backward glance. The long drive back to Boston was a blur of conflicting emotions, waves of raw grief, cold fury, profound disillusionment, and beneath it all, the terrifying, liberating clarity of finally seeing the truth. The truth wasn't just that they didn't love her the way she craved. It was that they likely never had. The long drive back to Boston from Buffalo after Christmas was a blur, fueled by caffeine, grief, and a simmering, righteous anger Kate hadn't known she possessed. The ATM fund chat messages, the casual cruelty, Sean's mocking voice note. They played on a loop in her mind, each repetition reinforcing the devastating truth. Her family's affection, the approval she had craved and sacrificed for her entire life, was entirely conditional, transactional. She wasn't a daughter or a sister. She was a resource. Arriving back at her quiet Boston apartment felt like entering a sanctuary, a space wholly separate from the toxic ecosystem she'd just fled. Her first act, before even unpacking her small overnight bags, was decisive. She sat down at her laptop, logged into her primary bank account, navigated to the scheduled payments, and located the $3,000 automatic monthly transfer designated for her parents' account. Her finger hovered over the cancel payment button for only a second, the years of ingrained guilt making a final, futile protest. Then, thinking of Sean's voice, thinks we still love her, she clicked it. Confirmed. Done. The ATM was officially permanently closed. She expected immediate repercussions, but the first days of January passed in an unnerving quiet from the Buffalo contingent. Perhaps they assumed a bank delay due to the holidays. Or maybe they were simply too preoccupied with their own post-holiday routines to notice the missing funds immediately. Kate used the silence to begin processing the enormity of the betrayal. The hurt was profound, a deep ache beneath the anger. Ben Carter, her kind, perceptive boyfriend, noticed her withdrawal immediately upon her return. She was quieter, shadows lingering in her eyes. The usual spark dimmed. He didn't push, but gently created space for her to talk when she was ready. "Kate," he said softly one evening after she'd merely picked at the dinner he cooked, "you seem like you're carrying the weight of the world. Whatever happened back home, you don't have to go through it alone." His quiet support gave Kate the courage to take the next crucial step. She knew she couldn't unpack this lifetime of dysfunction on her own. Remembering a recommendation from a colleague, she made an appointment with Dr. Evans, a therapist specializing in complex family dynamics and emotional trauma. The first therapy session was like lancing a deep wound. Kate struggled initially to articulate the depth of the betrayal, the years of feeling secondary, the profound shock of the ATM chat. Shame warred with incandescent rage. Hesitantly, she showed Dr. Evans the screenshots she'd taken from Moira's iPad. Dr. Evans read them carefully, her expression compassionate but professional. "Catherine," Dr. Evans said gently when Kate finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted. "Thank you for sharing this. What you're describing isn't a healthy family dynamic based on mutual love and support. It appears to be a deeply ingrained pattern of emotional and financial exploitation, likely stemming from long-standing parental favoritism and perhaps their own unaddressed issues. You weren't raised simply to be loved. You were conditioned to believe your primary value lay in being useful, in meeting their needs, particularly in relation to your brother." Hearing her lifelong experience validated so clearly by an objective professional was both devastating and incredibly liberating. It wasn't her fault. She wasn't too sensitive or selfish for feeling hurt and resentful. She was reacting normally to an abnormal, toxic situation. Week after week, Kate returned to therapy, slowly, painfully unpacking specific memories. The missed school events, the dismissed achievements, the constant financial demands disguised as family need, all viewed now through the clarifying lens of Dr. Evans' insights. She began to understand the manipulative power of Moira's guilt trips, Patrick's passive enablement, Sean's weaponized incompetence. She grieved for the loving, supportive family she deserved but never had, while simultaneously acknowledging the deep well of anger she was finally allowing herself to feel. Dr. Evans helped her practice distinguishing between healthy support and toxic obligation, introducing the concept of boundaries not as punishment, but as an essential self-preservation. Around the second week of January, as predicted, the calls and texts from Buffalo began. Tentative at first, reflecting confusion rather than outright panic. A text from Moira. "Kate, honey? Just checking our bank statement. The usual transfer hasn't shown up yet. Is everything okay with your account over there?" Followed by a voicemail from Patrick. "Kate, Pat, money hasn't arrived. Any problem on your end? Let me know." Kate read them, her heart rate increasing slightly, but held firm to the strategies to discuss with Dr. Evans. Observe. Don't engage yet. When another week passed with continued silence from Kate, their tone shifted dramatically. The confusion vanished, replaced by demands and accusations. Moira. "Catherine Riley! Are you punishing us? This is childish and cruel. The mortgage payment bounced because your transfer didn't arrive. You need to fix this immediately." Patrick, voicemail angry. "What the hell is going on, Kate? We rely on that money. You can't just cut us off. You turn that transfer back on now, you hear me?" And Sean, inevitably. "Seriously, Kate, WTF is wrong with Mom is freaking out. You're messing everything up. You owe us. Seeing the messages now, filtered through her therapeutic understanding, Kate recognized the pattern instantly. Zero acknowledgement of their own behavior revealed in the chat. Zero concern for her feelings. Only immediate blame, entitlement, and demands directed at her the moment their financial convenience was threatened. Dr. Evans had predicted this reaction almost verbatim. With a newfound sense of clarity and resolve, Kate sat down and methodically blocked Moira's number, blocked Patrick's, blocked Sean's, blocked Aunt Eileen and any other relatives she suspected might act as flying monkeys. She blocked their email addresses and any vestigial social media connections. It felt like closing and bolting a series of heavy steel doors against an incoming storm. A profound sense of quiet, of safety, washed over her. She focused on her healing. She talked extensively with Ben, perhaps finally sharing the full, ugly details of the ATM chat, trusting him with her vulnerability. His quiet horror on her behalf, coupled with his unwavering support for her decision to cut contact, was deeply validating. They spent weekends hiking in the nearby Blue Hills, exploring Boston's museums, cooking together in her increasingly personalized apartment, simple acts of building their life, a life based on mutual respect and genuine affection, entirely separate from the toxic demands of her past. The quiet in her life no longer felt empty or isolating. It felt like clean, open space filled with possibility and peace. She was finally starting to breathe her own air. Months unfolded in Boston, marked by the rhythm of challenging work at Biogen Dynamics, the deepening comfort of her relationship with Ben Carter, and the steady progress Kate made in therapy with Dr. Evans. The frantic calls and texts from the Buffalo had long ceased after she blocked their numbers. The silence from her family was now a background hum, no longer an unnerving void, but a confirmation of the necessary boundaries she had erected. She was healing, slowly excavating the layers of guilt and obligation that had defined her for decades, learning to prioritize her own needs, her own peace. Then one Saturday morning in late May, amidst a pile of junk mail and catalogs, lay a thick cream-colored envelope with formal, calligraphed addressing to Dr. Catherine Riley at her Boston apartment. The use of her professional title, something her family rarely acknowledged, immediately set off internal alarms. She opened it cautiously. Inside was an ornately printed invitation. Moira and Patrick Riley request the pleasure of your company at a dinner celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. The details followed. A date in late June. Time, the name of a well-known country club near Buffalo. Tucked inside on a smaller, separate card was a handwritten note in Moira's familiar looping script. Dearest Catherine, we do hope you can find it in your heart to join us as we celebrate this very special milestone. So much has happened, but family is forever. We miss you terribly and are so very proud of all your wonderful success. With deepest love, Mom. Kate stared at the note, reading it twice, then a third time, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Proud! After years of dismissal, after the ATM chat revealed their true contempt, now they were proud? The timing, the overly effusive sentiment, the manipulative family is forever. It reeked of calculation. 6 months of absolute silence after she cut off the $3,000 monthly transfer. 6 months during which the mortgage in default likely became a full-blown crisis. And this was their approach? Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but a formal invitation designed to lure her back into the fold, likely hoping her wonderful success could be leveraged to solve the financial mess their golden child Sean had exacerbated and they had perpetuated. Her immediate instinct was to toss the invitation straight into the recycling bin. The thought of spending an evening in their presence, enduring the forced smiles, the underlying tension, the inevitable subtle digs or overt appeals for help, disguised as casual conversation, made her stomach clench. She had drawn her line. Why willingly step back over it? Yet a part of her hesitated. 40 years. It was a significant milestone. Extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins like Megan, would likely be there. People she hadn't seen in years. People who had likely only heard Moira's carefully curated victim-centric version of events following the ATM chat discovery, if Moira had even dared mention it. Did she owe it to herself to show up, not as the dutiful, guilt-ridden daughter they expected, but as the successful, independent woman she had become? Was this perhaps the unexpected stage for a final, definitive act of closure? She wrestled with the decision for days, the invitation sitting accusingly on her kitchen counter. She discussed it with Ben, who as always offered support without pressure. "What do you want to get out of it, Kate?" he asked gently one evening, sensing her turmoil. Is there something you need to say or do for your own peace, separate from whatever manipulative game they might be playing? She brought it up with Dr. Evans in her next therapy session. Dr. Evans helped her dissect the layers of manipulation within Moira's note. The sudden declaration of pride likely linked to perceived financial need, the invocation of family forever as a tool of obligation. Attending could be re-traumatizing if you're not prepared, Catherine, Dr. Evans cautioned. But, she added thoughtfully, it could also be an opportunity, if approached consciously, to reclaim your narrative in a very public form of their choosing. What would that look like for you? What outcome would serve your healing? The idea resonated. Not reconciliation on their terms, certainly not a return to the sponsor role, but closure. A final public statement of her truth, delivered not out of anger anymore, but from a place of strength and clarity. A chance to confront their narrative directly, not just for them, but for the extended family, and most importantly for herself. To demonstrate unequivocally that she was no longer the person they thought they knew, the person they could manipulate and exploit. I think I need to go, Kate told Dr. Evans finally, the decision settling within her with a surprising sense of calm resolve. Not for them, not because I owe them anything, but for me, to close this chapter definitively on my own terms. Once the decision was made, Kate prepared for the anniversary dinner, not like attending a party, but like preparing for a crucial deposition where she held all the key evidence. She retrieved the saved evidence from her secure digital files, the crystal-clear screenshots of the ATM Chat messages, Moira strategizing guilt trips, Patrick dismissing Kate's worth, Sean mocking her perceived love as transactional need. She located the saved audio file of Sean's chilling voice note. Milk it. She actually thinks we still love her. Hilarious. She printed clean, legible copies of the most damning messages. She loaded the voice note onto her phone, ensuring it was easily accessible. She then went to her desk drawer and pulled out the checkbook for an old, rarely used bank account. She wrote a check payable to Moira and Patrick Riley. In the amount line, she carefully wrote $0.00. In the memo line, final family contribution. She placed the printouts in the check into a simple, plain manila envelope. She booked her flight to Buffalo in a rental car. She chose her outfit carefully, a sharp, well-tailored navy blue pantsuit that conveyed professionalism and quiet confidence, a stark contrast to the subdued, slightly apologetic style she used to adopt around her family. She felt calm, focused, strangely detached. This wasn't about inflicting pain anymore. The consequences of their actions were already unfolding naturally back in Buffalo. This was about truth, about ensuring that the narrative they had presented to the world, the one of the proud parents and their successful daughter, was publicly confronted with the stark, ugly reality she had uncovered. She was going back not as the ATM, but as the auditor. The ballroom at the Oak Hill Country Club near Buffalo wasn't quite as grand as Kate remembered from childhood events, or perhaps her perspective had simply shifted. The chandeliers seemed a touch less brilliant, the carpet slightly worn, the atmosphere thick with a forced joviality that couldn't quite mask an underlying strain, likely the financial one Kate had unknowingly subsidized for years. Extended family mingled, aunts, uncles, cousins like Megan, alongside neighbors and old friends of Moira and Patrick, all assembled to celebrate 40 years of the Riley marriage. Kate moved through the initial reception period with practiced politeness, accepting awkward hugs and surface-level pleasantries. "Catherine, you look wonderful. Boston agrees with you," Aunt Eileen gushed. "Moira tells us you're doing amazing things at that biotech firm." Kate offered a neutral smile, murmuring non-committal thanks, acutely aware that her mother had likely painted a picture of success designed solely to justify future financial expectations. Ben Carter was a quiet, steady presence beside her, observing the dynamics with his intelligent eyes, offering silent support with a light touch on her arm. She saw her immediate family holding court near the head table. Moira, resplendent in a slightly too bright floral dress, played the beaming matriarch. Patrick stood beside her, looking older, forcing smiles and handshakes, and Sean hovered nearby, attempting a look of artistic nonchalance that didn't quite hide the restless dissatisfaction in his eyes. He avoided catching Kate's gaze directly. Dinner was served. Predictable country club fare. Overcooked prime rib, watery green beans, roasted potatoes. Kate ate little, her stomach tight with anticipation, the plain manila envelope containing the damning evidence resting heavy in her evening bag. Finally, after the main course plates were cleared, Moira tapped her water glass with a spoon, calling for attention. She stood, beaming at the room, then specifically at Kate. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate 40 wonderful years with my Patrick," she began, her voice resonating with practiced warmth. She spoke of shared memories, challenges overcome, the importance of family ties. Then she turned the spotlight, as Kate knew she would. "And I especially want to acknowledge our wonderful daughter, Catherine," Moira continued, her smile widening as she looked directly at Kate. "She couldn't be here with us in Buffalo as often as we'd like, busy as she is with her incredibly important career in Boston." Could the carefully placed compliment designed, Kate knew, to both flatter and obligate, but she has always, always been our rock. So reliable, so supportive. Moira paused, then added with a light, self-deprecating chuckle aimed at the room. "Our little family ATM, we sometimes joke." Polite, slightly uncomfortable laughter rippled through some of the tables. Guests who knew the dynamic perhaps shifted awkwardly. Others took it as an innocent family jest. Ben tensed beside Kate, his hand finding hers under the table. Sean smirked faintly. Patrick looked down at his plate. But for Kate, hearing that word, and ATM, spoken aloud, publicly, framed as an affectionate joke after the secret chat she'd discovered, was the final confirmation. This performance wasn't just for the guests, it was a reassertion of her designated role, a public reminder of her expected function. As Moira raised her glass, "To family! And to our supportive Catherine!" Kate calmly pushed back her chair and stood up. A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned towards her. Moira faltered mid-sip, her smile freezing. "Thank you, Mom," Kate began, her voice surprisingly clear and steady, carrying easily in the sudden silence. She didn't need a microphone. "It's quite something to hear myself described publicly as the family rock, and particularly the family ATM." She let the ugly acronym hang in the air for a beat, watching faces register confusion, then dawning shock. "Especially," Kate continued, her gaze sweeping coolly over Moira, Patrick, and Sean, "since I recently became aware of the private ATM fund group chat the three of you use so effectively to strategize how best to, milk that ATM, as Sean so eloquently put it." Dead silence. Forks clattered onto plates. Jaws dropped. Moira went deathly pale, her hand flying to her throat. Patrick stared, horrified, looking trapped. Sean visibly shrank down in his seat, desperately avoiding eye contact with the stunned faces of his relatives now turning towards him. "For those of you who haven't been privy to the Riley family's private financial discussions," Kate continued, her voice remaining calm, almost conversational yet utterly devastating, "I thought perhaps tonight, on this auspicious 40th anniversary, would be an appropriate time to share some highlights. Transparency is important, after all." She reached into her evening bag, took out her phone, and deftly connected it to the small, powerful Bluetooth speaker she had placed discreetly beside her water glass. She pressed play. Sean's voice, instantly recognizable, filled the stunned ballroom, laced with that familiar, cynical laughter from the voice note. "Truly? Seriously, guys. It's almost pathetic how easy it is. Just gotta keep playing the sensitive, misunderstood artist card, you know? Lay on the struggle bus vibe. Milk it for all it's worth. She totally laps it right up. Actually thinks we still give a crap about her as a sister, not just the damn ATM machine. Thinks we still love her or something. It's hilarious." Gasps echoed through the room. Aunt Eileen looked physically ill. Cousin Megan stared at Sean with open disgust. The audio ended, leaving a thick, nauseating silence. Kate didn't pause. She picked up the printed screenshots from the envelope. "And just for context," she added, holding up the first page, "some selected messages." She began to read, her voice clear and unwavering. "Moira to Patrick, Shachid, Sean. Kate's quarterly bonus should deposit Friday. Sean, good time next week to mention needing help upgrading your recording software? Sound extra stressed?" Patrick to Moira. "Got off call, W, Kate. Same old dutiful daughter routine. She hasn't got a clue about the mortgage being paid off." Sean to parents. LOL just guilted Kate into $200 for gas money, buying Nike's VHX ATM. Moira to Sean. "Hush. Not until your music career truly takes off. We need that cushion. She'll never know. She's happy thinking she's our savior." She read several more, each message painting an undeniable picture of years of calculated manipulation, deceit, and utter contempt disguised as familial need. With each revealed text, Moira seemed to shrink further into her chair, Patrick buried his face in his hands, and Sean looked ready to physically bolt from the room as hostile glares from relatives pinned him in place. When she finished reading, Kate calmly placed the printed pages and the checkbook on the table. She drew out the single check she had written earlier. "So, yes, Mom," she said, looking directly at Moira's ashen face. "I was the ATM, the reliable rock you strategized milking, the daughter whose love you mistook for exploitable naivete." She walked deliberately towards the head table and placed the check for $0 directly in front of Moira. "Here's my final family contribution, along with a record of your appreciation." She gestured to the chat printouts. "Consider the ATM account permanently closed." Before the full chaos could erupt, though Aunt Eileen was already loudly demanding answers from a speechless Moira, and other relatives were murmuring furiously amongst themselves, turning towards Patrick and Sean. Kate turned to Ben, who stood up immediately, offering his arm. "Ready to leave, Ben?" she asked quietly. He nodded, his eyes full of quiet support. Together they turned and walked calmly towards the exit, heads held high. They didn't look back at the scene dissolving behind them. The stunned silence broken by rising arguments, Moira possibly starting to weep hysterically, Patrick looking utterly broken, Sean surely facing the long-overdue wrath of the extended family whose good opinion they clearly valued so highly. As they stepped out of the country club into the cool night air, Kate took a deep breath. It wasn't the triumphant feeling she might have once imagined. It was something quieter, deeper. A profound sense of release, of justice served not through anger but through the simple, devastating exposure of truth. Weeks later, Kate heard snippets through Cousin Megan. The anniversary party had ended abruptly in chaos. The rift within the extended Riley family was deep and likely permanent. Moira and Patrick, facing social disgrace and the stark reality of their finances without Kate's $3,000 monthly infusion, and likely unable to keep up the facade of the already paid-off mortgage, had quickly sold the Buffalo house under market value and moved into a small, grim rental apartment. Sean was reportedly still drifting, his music career a punchline, now facing open scorn instead of indulgent tolerance from relatives. Kate listened, felt a distant echo of sadness for the wreckage, but no guilt. She focused on her life in Boston, her fulfilling work at Biogen, her deepening relationship with Ben, her ongoing therapy sessions that continued to strengthen her sense of self-worth. She bought herself that bright yellow coat, wearing it defiantly against the gray New England skies. She was finally living her own life, funded by her own success, defined by her own choices. The ATM was closed, the dutiful daughter was gone, and Catherine Riley finally was free.